liftoff and the clock has started. Yes, sir. Reading you loud and clear.
Roger, roll, Discovery.
Discovery, roger, go from them.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the June 10, 2020 edition of Space News. This is Peter Ald, and tonight I'm joined by Tina Stagg and Michael Abdullah, and we're all from the Space Association of Australia. So let's get started with some Australian space news. NASA has been forced to delay its Northern Territory rocket launches, with the first liftoff from the Equatorial Launch Australia site in Arnhem Land postponed until next year. The two organisations plan to launch their Sounding Rocket program this year from the Arnhem Space Centre. Although preparation of the East Arnhem Land site near Nullumbee had been progressing smoothly, Equatorial Launch Australia Chief Executive Carly Scott said the plan had to be extended because of restrictions in response to the coronavirus pandemic. Ms. Scott said there was an upside to the delay, with the opportunity to look at one or two additional missions. Currently, NASA will launch 3 suborbital rockets carrying scientific research equipment from the East Arnhem site. Equatorial Launch secured the deal with NASA last year. And astronomers from West Australia's Curtin University have used mysterious fast radio bursts to solve a decades-old mystery of missing matter, long predicted to exist in the universe but never detected until now. Lead author, Associate Professor Jean-Pierre Marquardt from the Curtin University node of the International Centre for Radio Astronomy Research said astronomers had been searching for the missing matter for almost 30 years. The researchers were able to directly detect the missing matter using the phenomenon known as fast radio bursts, brief flashes of energy that appear to come from random directions in the sky and last for just milliseconds. Scientists don't yet know what causes them, but it must involve incredible energy, equivalent to the amount released by our Sun in 80 years. They have been difficult to detect as astronomers don't know when or where to look for them. Associate Professor Ryan Shannon, co-author from Swinburne University of Technology, said the key was the telescope used, CSIRO's Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder or ASCAP radio telescope. ASCAP both has wide field of view, about 60 times the size of the Moon, and can image in high resolution, he said. This means we can catch the bursts with relative ease and then pinpoint locations to their host galaxies with incredible precision. And it's over to you, Tina.
Thanks, Peter, and good evening, space fans. In NASA news, NASA has put a reorganisation of its Human Spaceflight Directorate on hold as it looks for a new leader. NASA Associate Administrator Steve Jerzik said last week that the reorganisation of the Human Exploration and Operations Mission Directorate, started earlier this year by its former leader, Doug Lavero, had been paused after Lavero's abrupt resignation from the agency last month. NASA is in the process of looking for a replacement for Lavero, a process Jerzik said should be completed in weeks, not months, and said the new directorate leader would have the opportunity to review and potentially change the reorganisation. And to NASA's Commercial Crew program and lots of SpaceX news. The 2 astronauts who flew the Crew Dragon spacecraft to the International Space Station are getting to work on the station. Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley will spend up to 4 months on the ISS, helping to maintain the station. The work could include several spacewalks to install batteries for the station's power system, delivered by a Japanese cargo spacecraft recently. NASA officials said they should know in about a month how long Behnken and Hurley will remain on the station. The successful Demo 2 launch won praise across the political spectrum, but it's uncertain if that will translate into increased funding for NASA. Nearly 20 members of Congress attended the launch, and afterward both Republican and Democratic members thanked NASA and SpaceX for restoring human orbital spaceflight capability to the country. President Donald Trump thanked SpaceX and its founder, Elon Musk, calling him someone who truly embodies the American ethos. Joe Biden, the former vice president who is running for president, also praised the launch, noting that the Commercial Crew program had its origins in the Obama administration. While NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine said he was seeking bipartisan apolitical support for NASA in order to win increased funding, neither the House nor Senate has started work on fiscal year 2021 appropriations bills or signalled if they will back the agency's request for nearly $3 billion in additional funding, primarily to support the Artemis program. Meanwhile, in unexpected Commercial Crew news, it was revealed late last week that through a May 15 modification of SpaceX's contract with NASA, SpaceX has been given approval to fly flight-proven Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon vehicles during future Commercial Crew missions to the International Space Station. In a major shift in Commercial Crew program policy from NASA, the agency has authorised SpaceX to reuse the first stage of the Falcon 9 rocket and the Crew Dragon capsule to deliver people to the ISS. Under the amended contract between SpaceX and NASA, permission to reuse the spacecraft and launch vehicle will start with post-certification Mission 2, or in other words, from the second operational crewed mission. SpaceX is committed to fly 6 operational crewed missions under a $2.6 billion deal the company signed with NASA in 2014. The wheels are already turning on the first of them, known as SpaceX Crew 1, which will send NASA astronauts Michael Hopkins, Victor Glover and Shannon Walker and Japan's Soichi Noguchi to the ISS for a 6-month stay. SpaceX Crew 1, also known simply as Crew 1, will be the first crewed operational flight of SpaceX's Crew Dragon spacecraft and its 3rd overall orbital flight. As it may this year, the mission was expected to launch on the 30th of August this year, with the exact launch date being determined by the success of the current Crew Dragon Demo 2 mission, and will transport 4 members of the Expedition 64 crew to the International Space Station. And in more International Space Station news, NASA has assigned an astronaut to the last Soyuz seat the agency expects to purchase from Russia. NASA said last week that Kate Rubins will fly to the ISS with Russian cosmonauts Sergei Ryzhikov and Sergei Kudsyverkov on a Soyuz spacecraft launching in October. Rubins spent 115 days on the station during a 2016 mission. NASA bought the Soyuz seat as insurance in the event of additional commercial crew delays, but with the success of the SpaceX Demo 2 mission, the agency does not anticipate buying more Soyuz seats. Looking at NASA's planetary and space science programs and work on NASA's James Webb Space Telescope that slowed during the coronavirus pandemic is starting to ramp back up again. Northrop Grumman, the telescope's prime contractor, is resuming a second shift of work on the telescope at its Southern California facility, while NASA personnel assigned to oversee the work are returning to the site. Testing of the JWST continues during the pandemic, but at a low level with just 5 shifts a week versus the 12 a week before the pandemic. Agency officials acknowledge that the telescope's March 2021 launch date is likely to slip as a result, but NASA has not set a new schedule for the mission. And over to Mike.
Thank you, Tina. And let's turn to Russia. Russian technicians are returning to French Guiana to check on a leaking upper stage. Roscosmos has sent workers to the European spaceport at Kourou, French Guiana, to investigate what appears to be oxidizer leaking from a frigate upper stage on a Soyuz rocket in storage there. Russia evacuated workers from the spaceport earlier this year during the pandemic, with Soyuz launches not expected to resume until the northern autumn. Meanwhile, the government of Kazakhstan is hoping a free economic zone at the Baikonur Cosmodrome will help improve the country's economy. Kazakh President Kasim Jomart Tokayev said the economic zone, as well as renovation of a launch site at Baikonur, could make a significant contribution to developing the economies of both Kazakhstan and Russia, but didn't elaborate on the specific economic benefits of those efforts. The spaceport is marking its 65th anniversary, although formal ceremonies celebrating the anniversary have been postponed until October because of the pandemic. And looking at China conducted a pair of launches recently. A Long March 11 rocket lifted off from the Xichang Satellite Launch Center, delivering 2 technology demonstration satellites to low Earth orbit. The launch was the first of the Long March 11, a solid-fueled rocket from Xichang. A Long March 2D rocket lifted off from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, placing into orbit the Gafen 9 imaging satellite and Head 4, a satellite for tracking ships and aircraft. And turning to commercial space news and SpaceX. SpaceX successfully launched another set of Starlink satellites last week. A Falcon 9 rocket lifted off from Cape Canaveral, Florida, and deployed its payload of 60 Starlink satellites 15 minutes later. The launch had been scheduled for last month, but was first delayed by weather and then deferred until after the Demo 2 commercial crew launch. The launch included the first VisorSat Starlink satellite, equipped with a sunshade to reduce the satellite's brightness and its impact on astronomy. It was also the first time SpaceX successfully launched and landed the same first stage 5 times. Meanwhile, environmentalists are asking for a review of SpaceX's activities at its South Texas test site after an explosion. As reported here on Space News last week, Starship prototype SN4 exploded recently after a static fire test, the 4th such vehicle to be destroyed in testing there. Wildlife advocates say they are concerned about the effects the testing is having on sea turtles who nest on a beach next to the site, as well as birds that live in wetlands nearby. They said the environmental assessment originally prepared for the site, when SpaceX planned to use it for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy launches, needed to be revised to examine the impacts of Starship testing. And back to Peter.
Thanks, Michael. And over to Virgin Galactic, Richard Branson is selling more of his stake in Virgin Galactic. Branson's holding company arranged for 12.3 million shares in the suborbital spaceflight company to be sold. Branson has been selling part of his Virgin Galactic holdings, which once accounted for a majority of the company, to raise money to save other Virgin companies like airline Virgin Atlantic, hard hit by the pandemic. Meanwhile, Virgin Galactic was an unexpected beneficiary of the Demo 2 commercial crew launch. Shares in the suborbital spaceflight company soared in early trading last week, apparently in reaction to the success of the SpaceX commercial crew flight. The stock market has often treated Virgin Galactic as a proxy for the broader commercial space industry, especially for companies like SpaceX that are privately held. And moving to the White House, the Trump campaign pulled a space-themed ad from YouTube that appeared to violate NASA media usage guidelines. The Make Space Great Again ad, posted on YouTube by the campaign last week, used a mix of historical space footage along with that from the Demo 2 commercial crew launch, and included as a voiceover excerpts of a Trump speech to the National Space Council in 2018. The footage in the ad predominantly featured the 2 astronauts on the Demo 2 mission and their families, along with SpaceX employees. Karen Nienberg, a former astronaut married to Demo 2 astronaut Doug Hurley, criticised that usage, calling it disturbing, while NASA media guidelines note that astronauts can't appear in commercial material. And finally this week, Arnie Aldrich, a long-time NASA and Lockheed Martin executive, has died. Aldrich passed away late last month, aged 83, from cancer. Aldrich spent 35 years at NASA, serving as Deputy Manager of the Skylab program and later Director of the Space Shuttle program after the Challenger accident. He joined Lockheed in 1994 as Vice President, retiring from the company in 2007. He received a number of American and international awards for his space work. And that's all for this week. Thank you, Michael and Tina, and we'll speak to you again next week. Bye now.